Well, good evening. My name is Jim Kello. Welcome so much to New Tracks Meetup tonight. This is where mentors help modelers build. We really appreciate you coming and joining us. Hope you'll come back often. Hope you'll tell your friends about us. Hope you'll offer suggestions. Anything that we can do to make this more helpful to you is what we'd like to be able to do. If you're new to the show, we hope you'll register at our website, newtracksmodeling.com. You'll get an email once you have subscribed, not registered, but once you have subscribed to the website, you'll get an email, and if you'll confirm the email, which in effect confirms you do have an email address, then you'll be subscribed appropriately, and you'll get email notices about all of our future shows. So we hope that you'll do that. We also hope that you'll pass that login information for the Zoom to your friends if you think that they might be interested or might be benefit from seeing our shows. I would like to ask a favor. There's a lot of effort that goes into producing these shows, and it's done by a lot of different people. I think we have 11 people now working on different things on the show, and we need more help because it's just an awful lot of things to do, and we're trying desperately to get enough people involved so that no one person has an inordinate amount of work or workload to produce the show. So if you're interested in helping us in some way, we encourage it. We hope that you'll volunteer. This old rule about model railroaders, 10% do 100% of the work. I hope that that doesn't apply here. A lot of you have been with the show since it started a little over a year ago now. And we're not asking a lot, but we do need help. The people that have been with the show for a long time need some relief. They need to be able to take a night off if they just can't be there. And we need help from people to make that happen. So I'm really begging you to consider donating a little bit of your time and helping us out here. The next My Build is going to be on June the 26th. And I'd like to turn this over to Chris Course a minute here. Chris is not going to be with us much of the summer, and Jeremy Wyatt is going to be replacing him during his absence. But Chris, I'd like for you to talk about how you think the last one went and what needs to be done for the next one on June the 26th.
All right. For those that are just joining us, Jeremy Wyatt is going to be taking over the My Builds for the next couple of months while I'm out of town. His email address is in the chat. And what we'd like to do is if you have a kit or a build to share, please email him those photos to the email address supplied above there in the chat. And what he will do is put them into a PowerPoint show. And so we're going to go basically chronologically by the build alongs. And then once you get the once we work our way through the build alongs, then it will be on to other builds that people are doing. So anyway, this worked out pretty well last week. Well, actually Saturday. And I thought that that's a great format to do it because there's a lot of continuity. It seemed to flow a lot quicker than it has in the past. And we actually ended up with quite a bit of participation. So if, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be the perfect model. In fact, I submitted one. I was quite frankly, I really was not happy with it, with my build because I was in a hurry. I was trying a bunch of new things. Some things worked, some things didn't, but don't be afraid to bring those to the table. Or if it's the greatest thing you've ever done, hey, bring it to the table. Or something you need help on, bring it up. And, maybe we can all help each other out with that. So anyway, June 26th just happens to be my birthday, but I won't be around for it. So anyway, please send your stuff to Jeremy Wyatt and participate in the My Build. As a community, that's what makes it work is everybody contributing. So back to you, Jim.
Thanks so much, Chris. And I hope you have a safe trip and don't have any problems while you're away from us. Next, we'd like to turn to Ted Becker, who is filling in for Paul Thompson. Paul is getting well, but he's still under the weather a little bit. And Ted graciously has volunteered to step in and take over doing the quick tips for him. So Ted, thanks again for doing this, and I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Today I'm going to continue my theme from last time in aids for applying glue. And what I'm going to talk about today is called a Dappen Dish. Last time I talked about how we, make a little puddle for white glue, and we've all used a little pad of paper or something for epoxy or a puddle of thick super glue. But what do we do with solvent cements? They just soak into anything, or they just run away. Well, the answer I found is called a Dappin Dish. It's this little glass bowl that's about 1.25 inches or so in diameter, and it's got a lid. I put a little puddle of the solvent cement in the bottom of the dish. You cover it. The cover's not airtight, but it slows down the evaporation quite a bit, and it also helps keep dropped parts out of the solvent. So you can just dip in with your brush. You can see exactly how much you're getting on your brush. If you buy your cement in a bottle like Micro Mark, same stuff. It's in a tall, skinny bottle that's easy to knock over. They wrap the label all the way around the bottle so you can't see how deep you're dipping the brush. So it's really kind of a pain. And so I find this works quite well. To put the solvent in the dish, I use I use disposable pipettes. These are very inexpensive, and they have many other uses in model railroad. But they are the perfect thing for transferring a little bit of your solvent cement into the Dappen Dish. And if you really love this hobby, you can get the Dappen Dishes in heart shaped. And that's it for today.
Ted, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I have trouble visualizing that in my workshop, but I appreciate the thought. Thank you.
Hey,
I
Ted.
got to put a little humor in this when I can.
Yeah.
Hey, Ted,
Yeah.
would it be advantageous to maybe put a rubber band around the lid edge to seal it better?
I doubt it.
Okay.
I don't think there's enough of a lip for it to stay, and the surface is uneven enough that it probably wouldn't seal.
Okay. All right.
Well, next I'd like to talk about I've Got a Question. It's a new series that we started, a new segment at least. And we have a question tonight from Jeremy White. And he asked, what tools, materials, and techniques would be recommended for soldering feeder wires to nickel silver 148 rail, which is, I'm assuming, O-scale rail. And Jeremy's not with us here tonight, but I'm looking for somebody who might want to do a short segment on one of our future shows coming up to answer Jeremy's question, and I think answer probably the same question for a lot of other models. So if you're interested and you'd like to answer Jeremy's question on our show, please send me an email. It's Jim Keller. Hello.
What's the question again?
What are the tools, techniques, and materials that would be recommended to solder feeder wires onto nickel silver 148-pound rail? So if you're interested in answering his question on our show, and maybe taking 15, 20 minutes, something like that, to do it, please send me an email. And my email address is jimkello1@gmail.com. And I'll set you up in time to do it. Hope that somebody on the show can help Jeremy out and show all of us what's involved in soldering those feeder wires. Next, I'd like to turn to Martin Breckfield, MMR, who's going to talk again with us about scratch building a car. Martin, welcome.
Evening, Jim. Let's see if I can get this all to work. And there we are. Scratch building cars, 8 or 9 or whatever number it is. I'm losing track of these things now. So we're going to fast forward a little bit on this one. Got a basic frame, some 1x4 that was cut down for the ends, a piece of roof stock that's just glued onto it, carpenter's glue, some end caps on the end of the end grain of the roof stock, just to cover up that nasty end grain, but also to give us a little overhang. And I've started on a side here. I've got, can't forget the train line. Got to put that in. If you don't put that in early, threading an S-curve through there doesn't work too good using 33 thousandths brass wire. It can be done, but it will lead to colorful language and perhaps pain in at least one finger, if not two. So got a, looks like an S-scale window that I thought it's time for this to go away. So we found a hole in the side of this. This is glued up from 1, 2, 3, at least 3 pieces of leftover scribe siding. We cut some holes for some two different size doors, some different scribe siding glued to the back side of this piece. This line here corresponds to this area right here, because I don't want to cut a hole too low or too high through the side of this piece of scribe siding off of the side. Otherwise the door is, and this piece of scribe siding that's the back, that's going to glued from the back, that's going to be part of the door, is not going to clear this decking. And then I'll have to carve out a piece of this so it'll all go back together again. Some small 1x trim for around the door frames, and that pretty much sets up this side. There's the end. And you can see this piece of glued on, I think that's 4x stock of some sort that I glued on the end. It kind of matches this where I positioned this end here and block with the scribe siding glued to it. Well, fast forward again. I must have really been zooming on this one. Oh God, that was a terrible joke. Sorry, pun, bad. The brake end. So we have a ratchet and pawl on a nice old brass stamped brake stand, Polyol Nation or Athearn, I don't know which. Some wire grab irons. I don't know why I use these, except I probably had them. They're actually from Northeastern and probably in a Ziploc bag that's been around way too long. You can see the beginnings of the roof. Nice brass precision scale brake wheel soldered on. A stirrup from Berkshire Valley. When I think I have 2 more of these left, and when they run out, I'm going to be really sad, because Berkshire Valley discontinued all of its freight car parts when changed owners. I tried to buy every single piece that they had left, and I don't know if I succeeded or not, but I'm still going to run out shortly. The other end, far less interesting. There's no brakes on this end. No brake stand, no shaft, but basically the same end. Splash some paint on just to see where everything went wrong. This is the other side. Second door's not on this side, but we have the windows. They were actually painted separately and then glazed and then put back in, because otherwise I'm not good enough to paint that fine detail with a brush, and certainly not with any kind of other airbrush. And here's the first side. You can see this is the first coat of paint, because I did a lousy job. You can see the didn't quite get down in the scribed hollows on the scribed siding. One thing I like to do to make sure that gets in evenly is I take a soft brass wire brush and just brush the sides vigorously to clean out all the debris and dust and dirt or whatever that's been gathered in there, or just sitting around in my shop or in the work, or as I put this together, gathering dust or sawdust. But just wire brushing it cleans that all out pretty neatly. Well, the underbody, this looks familiar, I'm sure. The basic K-brake, some Berkshire Valley levers, some precision scale brake hangers. I even tied this into the airline, train line. Unusual for me to do that. I don't know if I soldered that. I probably just looped it around it with this. This is probably a phosphor bronze wire that I bent shaped into this. And I looped it around it and just crimped it on. It looks good enough that you can't really tell after you put some paint on it. You'll never know the difference. Some steps, we'll get back to those, but those are just fabricated from brass stock. So all kinds of good things here. Door handles, grabs, steps. I never claimed to be very good at soldering. I'm working diligently to my way up to adequate. Adequate means you don't burn yourself, probably. And it hasn't happened recently, so I guess I'm almost there. But this is 15 by 60 thousandths brass flat stock. It's Detail Associates. Good luck at finding any. I don't know where that's all vanished to, but it's very difficult to find apparently. But it's just folded up, soldered in place. I hold these things together with a hemostat, clamp the hemostat to a stand, and the drop of ruby flux. I got a bottle of ruby flux that the machinist where I retired from 3 years ago, he gave that to me. It's going to last me probably for the next 10 or 15 years. I don't know where you buy ruby flux, but it's really good. I like it a lot. And he swore by it. And when you're working with a guy who's a master machinist who can basically make anything out of any material you've ever thought of or will think of, you just say thank you and leave, and you make use of whatever he gives you. So stirrup steps, I put these on first with a little bit of goo, then some CA underneath the goo. And these are actually then drilled out, and there's actually pins put in through those generally, so they don't wander off. And we'll fast forward towards the end, a little more paint. You can see the roof. We've got some roof walks, just some basic pieces of metal underneath these that I got. I don't remember what those were, where those came from actually now, but that looks like that's a white metal one that I drilled out and put in. I just use a hand drill to put these in through the roof, and just measure the size, drill a hole, plop it in place with a little bit of goo, spin it 180 degrees from where you put it in the first time. It's not going anywhere if you put a little CA in there with it at the same time. Come back with a little steam black or a darker, cleaner black around the base for a little bit of tar. Looks pretty fair. Just touch up all the ironwork and steps with some steam black. And oddly enough, I actually lettered this car. So it's lettered from my own railroad, Cumberland Valley Railroad. It's a fire car, which means you take it when you want to go start the fire, or maybe you take it when you want to go put the fire out. The supplies, whichever way you want to go with it. Almost all my cars have single digit numbers. Well, double digits. Nothing. No. Very few triple digit in the cars. When I run out of triple digits, I'm probably going to have to retire from building cars. This has the tar paper roof that I make out of Panera napkins, multiple layers of it, glued down with 50% carpenter's glue with a layer of covered with paint from Polylark dark gray in this particular case. You can see the other side. Didn't bother to put a letterboard on this car for some reason. I have no idea why. Probably because there was no room. And that's all we're going to do in this car. So we're going to wrap this one up till next time. And if there's any questions, you want to throw something at me about building cars, now's the time to do it. I'm still here.
Martin, this is Greg.
Yes, sir.
You talk about having to put the brake line in
Yeah.
before you put everything together. I assume you also have to drill those holes before you put it together. And do you just have a standard place where you always drill them and you always bend the wire the same way?
No, I'm pretty much doing it freehand. I said that because the car size, the car chunk goes anywhere from 36 to 40 feet. It's generally centered, more or less. Yeah, I would say it's generally centered. Some cars, you look at prototypes and it's all over the place. But I tend to keep them centered because somewhere around that, where that loop comes back in, is where it also tells me to put the K-brake casting. So if I do want to tie it into the train line, I don't have to run a piece of wire all over the place just to tie it together.
Mm-hmm.
And the holes on that, I just mark them. Mark the two center pieces. It's about a 1/8 inch drill, hand drill, my little Makita hand drill, battery drill. Drill it at an angle, form the wire to the right S curve. Put the two pieces of wood in there and put glue on the two pieces of wood and plant the two pieces of wood all at the same time. It takes about 3.5 hands to do that. But after you've done it 15 or 30 times, it becomes less painful and you just muddle through it. You line the marks and you get pretty close the first time. You put a big weight on top of it and forget about it.
Only 30?
Yeah, well, I tend to be messy with it. It is tricky sometimes because you can get one end of one piece in and you get the other end in and you go to the second piece and it's nowhere near where it's supposed to be. You have to grab it because you don't want to get glue all over everything at the same time. So you're trying to hold it up so you can put it in where it belongs, but you want to hold it up so it doesn't get glue on everything at the same time. So you got to get it in and drop it into place and, well, that's it, done, quick. Slap a big hunk of iron on it and forget about it, run away.
With your fingers crossed.
No, it's not, no. With your fingers intact because it's a heavy piece of iron. You just want to do it quickly and say, okay, we got it. Because you don't want to go back and mess with it because you'll probably make it worse. Odds are it will not get better. Yeah. Sure.
Thanks so much, Martin. I really do appreciate it and great advice on doing the train line. No question about it.
That it is a tricky and annoying thing to do. And it's much trickier and more annoying if you have to do it later.
Yes, absolutely.
Drilling the holes after all the boards are in place is really, really painful. And at that point, if you're smart, and I've kind of learned how to do this, is that you don't drill the holes, you just cut a notch in it and drop the wire in, forget about it, and cover the notch up and say, I didn't see anything, I didn't do it.
All right, so next up is Bill Davis, and this is going to be a new one. This is another one of our build-alongs.
Cool.
And this one is going to be of a LaBelle kit, closed vestibule baggage car. And LaBelle has offered a 25% discount to all the modelers who want to build this model along with Bill. And this is Bill's first evening to build this car. And Bill, I can't thank you enough for doing this for us, and turn it over to you, sir.
Well, thanks, Jim. I'm not sure I was going to volunteer to this until Guido showed up here and said, you're doing it. So, anyway. So anyway, this is where am I at here? Let that share. Oh boy. Okay, I don't want that. Hang on one second, guys. Close tab. All right. Come on. Okay. How do I full screen this? How do I full screen this thing here? Is that it?
Yeah, click that right there.
I got it. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to be building here is a Labelle closed vestibule O-scale baggage car. It's been a long time since I built a wooden a wooden passenger car. I do have another one that I've been working on for a long time, which is a Southern immigrant, or actually a New England immigrant car, or a Southern Jim Crow type of car, where I've replaced a lot of stuff on. I'm planning full interior. I'm not doing interior or anything on this model. I got the kit just a few days ago, and I read the instructions, and they were interesting, to say the least. There's a lot of stuff that in this kit will have to be built and scratch built and carved and things, and there's not a lot of detail about how to do all this stuff. So we'll be dealing with that as we go along here. So before we get started on any kind of actual building here, let's take a look at some baggage cars. I went on the internet and I thought I'd have no problem finding pictures of wooden baggage cars, but I was wrong. A lot of steel baggage cars, but not wooden ones. But I did find these. This is one from the Erie Railroad. Now, notice the end, how the end roof is, because that's going to be an interesting thing as we go through these pictures. I also, on this car, it didn't come with windows in it, but I added the windows, not that many windows, but a window on each end of it. So this is one from the Northwestern Pacific, California. Notice that they have the metal sheeting by the doors. I'm going to add that on mine. And also notice that they don't have the end like the, my mouse. Notice how the door section is recessed here, and the end of the roof sticks beyond, but on this car, the end is kind of curved to match the end of the roof. So there's a couple of things I'm going to be using off of this car for my project here. And then finally, the one I liked best of all of it is this Canadian Pacific type car. And once again, look at how their end is. They have the end, the side part of the clear story area is not curved like the other two are, and the end is pretty straight. That's the easiest end to build. And Jim sent me an email. Some guy was asking how I was going to do the curving of the roof. And to be honest with you, I haven't decided just yet. I have lots of different options for doing it, but I have to keep in mind that we don't all have the power tools and things that I have. And so I'm going to do it probably with a lot of filing and stuff like this. But which one of these three combinations of roof ends I'm going to do is still up in the air. So let's take a look at this thing. Before that, there's a couple articles I found that were quite helpful in learning about building this car. One was in O-Scale Trains, November, December 2007 issue. And a gentleman built an Erie version, and he put the windows in the side of it. And so I read that article. There was also a real scale baggage car. Unfortunately, you can't get on Railroad Line Forum anymore. I don't know what's going on, if they're just working on it or changing it, or it's gone away or what, but I get the error message that it's not available, or, we're steaming up or whatever. So I'm not sure what's going on with Railroad Line Forum, but I hope that article comes back, because there was a lot of really good information in that one. But my favorite article for this is in the May 1967 issue of Railroad Model Craftsman. Paul Larson, one of my model railroad heroes, did this article on building a branch line combine. And he went through quite a bit of the process of building it. But the best part of this article is he had drawings of the underframe, and he showed how he made all the underbody detail parts and stuff. Now, this is 1967, so technology is way different than what we got going on here today. But still, I mean, this is a pretty impressive car that he built for that period. I mean, you look at the detail he has on this thing, and if you get a hold of this issue and look at the article, the full underframe is done. Everything is pinned in place, like Martin was talking about doing, and it's just a really beautiful model. So this is what's in the box. It's pretty frightening when you first look at it and drag all this stuff out there and spread it all out and go, oh my gosh, what is all this stuff? So these are the sides. This is the underframe. This is the different castings. This is all the end pieces. This is the doors and some of the siding and that kind of stuff. This is the another part of the underframe. This is supposed to be used for the truss rods, but I don't think I'm going to use that for the truss rods. But that's what they gave you for the truss rods. Although I do like using fish line for truss rods. I'm going to do that. Now, the interesting thing about these kits is back in the day, I built some of the HO versions of this, and they weren't laser cut. But this one, the door openings are laser cut. You can see this little piece right here. This is the end trim for the roof, and these are templates for how to carve the roof. So I thought that was really cool. This door here, that's laser cut. The windows for the clear story, that's laser cut. So LaBelle has picked up on some modern day technology, but overall, they're still, in a lot of ways, still doing it the way they did it back in the day. Any questions so far? Okay. So the first thing I did was cut window openings in the side. And I talked when the Hunter Duck people were talking about building their bridge. One of the questions I asked is, how come you don't use jigs? Well, I use jigs for anything I have to do more than one time. I make a jig. I mean, it just took me a few seconds to take a window casting and cut that U shape out of it and mark the center of the location of the window. And actually, the other side of this has a line on it here to match that line. And take your X-Acto knife and cut the thing open. So, I mean, jigs are really handy, and I don't know why people don't do them. They're simple to build. They don't take a lot of time. You know, they're not fancy. Maybe I'll do a 15-minute segment on different kind of jigs and stuff like this sometime. So here's some close-ups, some of the details I did to put this car together. I built the sides first. As you can see, this is laser cut. You can see the burn marks from the laser. I put a strip on each side here. They give you a strip of wood for that, and it's a black colored tip. Unfortunately, they gave another piece the same color black, and I used that piece, which is a little more heavy, which I liked. So I had to come up with the pieces from my scrap collection to do the rest of the car body. So one side's got that piece, and the other side I scrounged together some parts to do the other side. So to build this, you go back. This car here, knows the letter board is complete, the side is complete, the door opening is complete on this, and these ends we'll modify in the future. So I first put this strip down the side here, and then I started working with the siding on here. Now I ran into some issues putting the siding on because I found out that the siding is not universal thickness. And so I had to deal with that. Also, I had to make sure that the corners would match up correctly. We'll get into that more in just a minute. So anyway, I then added this quarter round here. Now they have two sizes of quarter rounds. They have a large one and a small one. This is the small quarter round. So you glue this strip here, and then you match the quarter round to the back of the casting. I mean, of the wooden subwall. But what I did was I put the door in place behind there as I'm gluing this in. Didn't glue the door in place, just the upper part. There's a opening strip, narrow strip at the top of the car body. So you just match the back there, and then use the bottom of the door to match the bottom there, and it'll line this piece up perfectly for the door. Same thing on the other side here. Now the other thing I ran into is not all the doors openings are uniform. So I had to cut some edging off of this door here and off the bottom a little bit. So I just took off like maybe 32nd on each side. It doesn't have to fit real tight in the opening because the quarter round strips cover up any excess areas. So just make sure that it sits square and level, and you're fine. And then I added the scribe siding to the back of the door part here, in the lower part of the door. This part will be windows. On the end, they give you a 1/16 by 1/8 inch strip, and then they have the large quarter round. So I use the large quarter round. I put this strip, once again, match the back of the car, but I added to the back of the car at this point here, I added a piece of scrap material from my collection to complete the, you'll see there's a thickness variation at the top of the car. So to complete that to the top of the car, I added the strip, but you don't go all the way up onto the letterboard because you need room for the roof to stick in when you put the roof on. Now here's the completed side. Now I ran into some real issues here. Well, you can see it here. This is showing up a little bit here. Because the siding material was not universally thickness, I had to deal with the issue of getting the joints to not show. And anywhere where the joints did show, I used wet dry 400 grit sandpaper and sanded it. Finally, I had some Grant Line windows that I used for my size windows in here, and it's got the opening accordingly. And so at this point here, you should have your sides all assembled, and we're ready to move on to the ends, which we'll do next time. Any questions?
Yeah,
Yes, we have a question. Oops, sorry.
Sure.
Go ahead.
We have a question from YouTube. What scale are you modeling in?
O scale, 1 to
scale.
48.
Yeah, Bill, this is Greg. You've done some of these in HO. Other than the fact that this is more modern and has laser cut, are they similar in their construction and the parts that you get from LaBelle?
Yes, and the white metal casting needs some serious cleaning work on them. So yes, yeah. So I think a lot of stuff Rick hasn't upgraded to more present day technology. That is not a negative to the kit because these cars can build into beautiful cars, and hopefully this will end up being that way. Now I know in this car here, like I said, I'm going to be adding those metal strips on the bottom of the bottom here. I'll be adding grab irons on each side of the doors, grab irons on the end over here, grab irons on this end over here to complete the sides, and the thing. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Bill, you said to get the sides even thickness that you sanded. I'm assuming you sanded the backside.
No. Well, yes. Yeah, I did that. But the other thing I did too is when I cut to the joint parts there, I sanded the edge with, like I said, wet dry 400 grit sandpaper. I didn't actually wet the sandpaper. I used the wet dry, but I also did it on a slight bevel so that when you come together here, your front matches up real tight. Your back, you don't care if it matches up or not. Oh, and by the way, everything I glued here, I used Type Bond original wood glue, basically a carpenter's glue. I'm an old carpenter, so basically carpenter's glue.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to probably have to add
So really what you did, you beveled the edges where they met.
one edge only.
Okay.
And I made sure that the edge boards on both sides were nice and straight and even. I actually, when I put this together the first time, one of the sheets I had there, somehow the siding was grooved on an angle and it was cut out or whatever. And so I had to peel it back off again and put it back on. The good news is I had enough siding left over to do the whole car and stuff. The other car I have, the one I'm building into a center baggage compartment car, I actually replaced the siding with, I replaced the windows in the car with Grant Line windows, and the siding I'm replacing with evergreen passenger car plastic siding.
Okay.
I could have done that in this car, but my intention here is to actually build the car. So as you know, as close as possible as the kit is designed. So.
That's a great job.
Hey, Bill,
Yeah.
For the kick plates at the bottom of the door, what do you intend on using? I've used aluminum foil in the past with very good success.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I thought about that. You know, I wish I could get more of this. I used to have some of the foil tape that's self-sticking that you use when you're doing like duct work and stuff like this, but I don't have a roll of that. And you got to buy, 3,000 feet of it to get. You can't buy a roll that's 10 feet long. You got to buy, this massive roll of this stuff. So I thought about using that. I have some Strathmore board. I thought about doing that. And I thought about just using like 5,000 styrene.
Yeah. Hey,
And
Bill?
what I'll probably do is pounce some kind of nailing for that.
That's one of the reasons I like the aluminum foil, because a bounce wheel works great.
Mm-hmm. A good point. Yep. Good point. Yeah. So,
Bill,
so then-
Martin Brickbill here.
yeah.
Bill, you could use cardstock for that just as easily, I think.
Well, that's why I had the Strathmore board. That is like a,
Yeah, I just use like cut up a 4x6 index card to whatever I want.
yeah, that's a good idea too. That's definitely. Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, do you want you want a few feet of surgical silk for your truss rods?
Sure. I've been watching you do that, but wanting to try that. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'll shoot you an email later, and
Okay.
I got to dig out your address from wherever I lost it.
That's okay. I have a friend that's known me forever, and every time he sends me something, he asks my address. So.
I'm not sure if I put it on. I don't know if I filed you under Bill or D for Davis or William, and
Yep.
I still have to work my way through a paper Rolodex.
Well, you know, the classic of that is if you get a chance to watch if you ever get a chance to watch any of the episodes, there's this episode of WKRP in which they wanted all the addresses of all the people there, and they asked the girl who plays Bailey Quarters to do it in her address book, and she had things under the most bizarre things for who they were, you know, like one of the guys that did under disc jockey, you know, it's just nobody's under their real name. It was pretty bizarre. Anyway.
Your comments about the laser cutting is being a little bit off here and there. The last LaBelle kit I built was the gondola about 16, 18 months ago. And I thought, oh, great, it's laser cut. It'll be perfect. And everything worked great until I went to drop the ends in between the two sides. And they turned out to be, they were four scale inches short. Well, okay. Well, they matched. Both ends were exactly the same size, but they were not the right size. So, laser cutters are great, and they're great at making stuff repeatedly the same way. But just like everything else, you can still get it wrong.
Right. Exactly.
So I was curious how the baggage car, passenger cars turned out. I've got an early Penzi baggage car on my list of do it someday list. So
it's gonna be a wooden one.
Oh yeah.
It's, you know, Martin, it's a nice kit. The only thing I would do differently is I replace the siding with styrene.
Yeah, I work with styrene like once a year if I'm careful.
Well, you know, I didn't do this on this car, and I thought about doing that. When I did the caboose article in O-Scale Trains, great magazine, by the way, in O-Scale Trains.
Checks in the mail. The checks in the mail.
Oh, thank you. I found at Michael's in the scrapbooking department glue sheet.
Oh, okay.
And I thought about putting down glue sheet on this, and and then sticking all the siding down with glue sheet.
Right.
Yeah, it works great. And when I built the caboose the first time, I did it all with liquid cement, and it worked out real good, except that the liquid cement caused the siding to suck in between all the framing. So I found out by doing it with the glue sheet, I didn't have that problem.
That's a nice tip. That's a nice idea. I'm going to have to.
And on top of that, you get 40% off of the coupon.
Well, Bill, I want to thank you so much for tonight. That's a great bill, and I look forward to the next segment of this next week.
And when is that? Next week, you said?
Yeah, well, it's every week on the same Wednesday, so it's a week from today.
Okay. One other thing I was going to say here too, that I am debating about the situation, because if you look at the picture carefully here, you'll notice that across the letterboard, there's like variances in the edge of the letterboard. And I've thought about adding a very thin strip of wood, cardstock, whatever, across that letterboard, so I could get a little bit thicker on the letterboard, so it would lift over the wooden siding better and would hide the fact that there's a little bit of wave in the wooden siding because of the way the thickness of the siding is. Oh, one other thing too, because of the thickness issue, before I glued anything, I laid the sheets together and see how the edges compared. So I didn't get a real thick edge with a thin edge. So, and pretty much it all worked out pretty well. And if I had one where there's a minor difference in thickness, I would be able to sand the backside of that a little bit, so that when I laid it on my flat surface, that it looked like the same thickness when it went together. Because you really don't want that siding to be at different levels across the side of the car. That'll really look ugly.
Yeah, it sounds like a strip of cardstock across to make a new letterboard or increase the thickness of the letterboard would be in order.
Yeah. See, I was at your house just the other day discussing that. Anyway.
Hey,
all
Bill,
right, well, guys,
hey, Bill, we got two more questions. One
Okay.
one from YouTube.
Okay.
Is this 2 or 3 rail?
Oh, this is 2 rail, probably P48.
Okay.
But it could,
second-
but hold it, wait a second.
Oh, I know what
But
you're going.
But Bill, the same
Yes.
the same car with 3 rail trucks and couplers will work, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So while you're building it to 2 rail scale, probably P48, there's no reason that a modeler with a 3 rail layout couldn't run this car on that layout.
Yeah, the only thing that would be different would be how you mount the couplers, which I'm not even sure how I'm going to mount the couplers myself. I know that when Paul Larson mounted the couplers on it, on his, he mounted them with a little bracket, and they actually pivoted underneath the car, and not a lot, but enough to be able to deal with the curve issue on a layout.
Right.
Probably in the real railroads, those couplers had a little bit of swing to them too, like that. You know, the way Larson did it was very similar to the way trolley cars were done, except of course not that full across the end swing of the couplers.
Right. What's the other
And-
question, Ed?
The second question is I actually bought the combine. How would you do the passenger windows?
In the way LaBelle did it, or what I did with what I'm doing with a model.
I would say the
both.
way LaBelle did it. I also wound up doing the older 50-foot open platform version.
Well, listen, we just don't have time for any more tonight.
Well, I can answer that real quick. LaBelle
Okay.
cuts the windows in for you, so it's not an issue.
All right.
But on the combine, the windows aren't there, right?
They are there.
Oh, they are there on the
They are
combine.
there. Yeah, same thing with all the passenger cars have the windows cut into them.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
So Bill,
all right.
thank you so much. I'm not trying to cut you off. We just got.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Got to move.
Okay.
But thank you so much for doing this, and look forward to next week. Next Wednesday will be number 2, and we look forward to that. Thanks so much, Bill.
Okay. Thanks, Jim.
Now I'd like to go, before we go to our featured modeler, I have one more person that I want to get to tonight. I'm really, really impressed that I was able to find Jamie. Jamie Bothwell, he is a specialist in underbody detail for passenger cars.
Ah, yes.
And you heard Bill talk about the article back in '67. I've read that article. I mean, it's amazing the kind of modeling that people did back in 1967. And frankly, what they created were just masterpieces in my mind.
Mhm.
So Jamie's here tonight and is going to do a couple of sessions for us on underbody detail, and this is the first one. So Jamie, I hate to tell you, but on the front end, you got 15 minutes tonight. I've got to move the show along, and we're running a little bit over. So let me introduce you, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much for doing this for us.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Jamie. So I got a PowerPoint ready to go if you figure out how to do that.
Fantastic. Ed, can you help him?
Go down to the bottom of the
Yeah,
screen and you'll
share
see it says
screen,
share
yeah.
screen.
Yep, got that part. What I'm worried about is can I play from start. Is that okay? Looks like it's going to work, huh?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. So Jim's probably talking a little bit more, talking me up a little more than he should. I don't know, expert, but I've read a lot of books and I've taken a lot of pictures and I've crawled under a lot of passenger cars. So, now I'm actually learning some new stuff for this presentation, which I'll share with you when we get to that particular point. So anyway, first of all, this to me is one of the saddest things in the world here. I believe this car is actually the Rotary Club, but if you'll notice in this space, do you see that when I move my cursor? You guys see
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yep.
All this space under here was stuff that somebody took off. It's just, so anyway, this car is in the outskirts of Cleveland. It's in Berea, Ohio, but I believe even though it says Berean, it's actually the Rotary Club. Okay, so here's what these are the dates for my presentation so far. June 2nd, which is tonight, I'm going to try to cover brakes and heating. June 16th, I'm going to cover electrical. June 23rd, water, and June 30th, air conditioning. Notice nothing for next week. The guy that I operate his layout, he's going to go back to operations next week, and I'm the dispatcher, so I kind of have to be there. So anyway, and Jim has told me that if you guys are interested, we could do a few more. You'll notice the trucks are decidedly vacant there. So, that would be the next thing I would do, is spend a week or two talking about trucks if people are interested beyond what I'll say in these four sessions. Okay. All right. So let's see. Why is this not? Okay. Okay. That'll work. Okay. So the eras, again, these are sort of broadly defined. Okay. I just sort of said, what could I do to, break this up? Again, as I said earlier, I was going to break it up by topic, but also, kind of by era. So what I'm calling the ancient era is anything, say, pre-1960, 1869. And then the wooden era, which is defined by the introduction of air brakes. The heavyweight era, which is defined by steel construction. The streamline era, which is lightweight cars. And then the modern day. I won't touch much on the ancient era because there just wasn't really a whole lot under passenger cars at that time. And I won't touch on the modern era because I just don't really know what's going on there. So, I'm sure all of the systems that I'm going to talk about are still there. I just don't know how they're presenting themselves, what parts are what entirely. I also hope to, in the weeks that follow, to go into the idea of, so you run into this car in a museum somewhere, what if it is real, and what of it, what's original, like a tourist railroad. You find a car on a tourist railroad, how much of the underframe have they replaced and how much is the original stuff. I think Jim has me build as a what does he call it? A watch me build. And, I'm not going to be a watch me build so much as a, what are you looking at here? I'm trusting you guys to be smart enough to glue stuff onto the bottom of a passenger car, maybe drill a hole or two. So it's not going to be so much about me building and you watching as it is about, like, what do you look for if you see photographs of these cars, or, you run across one in a museum or a tourist railroad somewhere. So anyway, with that, okay, so, in the ancient era, they had handbrakes. In the wooden era, they had what were known as the PM brakes and the LN brakes. In the heavyweight era, mostly the UC brake. The streamline era, they went to a D22 brake. And in the modern era, I have no idea what brakes they're using these days, but obviously the cars still have brakes. So here's your basic PM brake. Whoops, move my light here. You'll notice that it has an auxiliary reservoir. So basically one air tank. And then it has the brake cylinder. You see the train line there. And then they've got this is a P-type triple valve. So that's why it's called a PM brake. Okay, so moving along. We've got the LN brake. Okay, you'll notice that we've moved up to 2 reservoirs. So we've got an auxiliary reservoir and a supplementary reservoir. Not sure how auxiliary and supplementary are any different, but that's what they say. And then here you'll notice we've got the L triple valve. Here. So that's why it's an LN brake, because it's got an L triple valve. Again, the train line runner. Okay, so this is Rutland 260. It's in a museum in Connecticut somewhere. I forget the exact town. I want to say Watertown. I bumbled across this last fall, sort of an interesting adventure, but don't have time to detail that there. Here you see the brake cylinder, this guy right here, and then here you see an air tank, which I'm guessing it's connected to the brake because it's close. I'm guessing based on the picture that this would be a PM brake, because it looks like this. You can see this sort of round thing sticking out, and you see the one tank. But unless I were to get under there and really trace that, I don't know for sure. But again, this is a car. You can see it's of wood construction. It's got a truss rod, so this would be very similar to the passenger car that we're building along right now. So be very, very similar to that in construction to that. So. And again, I looked for some ideas about like, were there years that the PM and the LN brake were used? I haven't really found anything. If I find something in the next few weeks, I'll share that with you. Okay, so here we get to the UC brake. And so the UC brake was sort of like the standard brake of the heavyweight Pullman era. So again, heavyweight Pullmans, they started appearing in the early teens. I forget what the first steel Pullman exactly, but they basically were being built until the mid 30s, and then obviously they lasted into the 60s essentially, in use. So that would be the heavyweight and the lightweight, I'm sure, are the two that most of us are interested in. This is the UC valve. That's why the brake gets its name. You'll notice we're up to 3 brake cylinders now. Here's the brake cylinder itself. The brake cylinder is mounted on the car. It's mounted on the underbody of the car. But you'll notice that we've got let's see, there's a service reservoir. This guy over here is an auxiliary reservoir. And this guy is the emergency reservoir. Okay, so 3 different size tanks. Now, I don't believe these drawings are exactly to scale. I don't think you've got an air tank that, the air tanks would be considerably bigger than the UC reservoir itself or the brake cylinder itself. They most show the connections and how everything's hooked together. Okay, this is what's available in S scale. Whoops, it moved on me. What did it do? How do I go backwards? Oh, there we go. I'm an S scale modeler, and so I went to Bill's Train Shop, BTS, and I stole pictures from his website. So these are his part numbers. If you want to build an S scale car, you can look up his part numbers and order some from him. I'm sure he won't mind because I'm kind of advertising for him. But anyway, this is the UC valve that we've got in S scale. And again, let's see, there's the brake cylinder. I am still trying to figure out what this bracket thing does, because for the life of me, I can't find the equivalent of that under cars. I've crawled under many Pullman cars trying to figure out what exactly that is. Now, the UC brake, let's see if I go back. Yeah, no, this says single brake cylinder. Sometimes in the UC brake, they had 2 cylinders. Some cars had 2 cylinders. Usually when you see that, there's going to be one on either side of the center sill. So anytime you look at a picture of the car, you don't know necessarily that it's got 2 brake cylinders because you're only looking at one side of it. So, but anyway, there's your brake cylinder there. Okay, now we get into the D22, which is the streamlined, this appeared with streamlined cars, so probably in the post-war period, maybe as early as the late 1930s, but you can see we've gotten to be quite a bit more complicated here. All right, so here's our D22 valve right here. You've got 2 brake reservoirs. Again, I don't think they're to scale. Actually, these are 2 auxiliary reservoirs. Here you've got the what do they call that? A command reservoir, it looks like. So that's the general brake reservoir there. Notice that there are 4 brake cylinders. Now the brake cylinders are mounted on the trucks themselves. So these brake cylinders are mounted. There's generally one on either side of each truck. So, and then these guys here are called Decelestats. Those are, it's a gadget that they hooked up to the wheel of the car. And if the car, basically what it would do is if they detected that the brakes had locked the wheels and that they were sliding, it would release the brakes, kind of like an anti-lock braking system in a car today. And the idea was that you wouldn't put a flat spot onto the wheel. So that's basically what the Decelestat did. Here you got what is this guy here? This is a reducing valve. And then there's this guy, and here's another valve. Here's the magnet valve. Some brakes were magnetic, I believe. I don't think that was common to all, but like I know the 20th Century Limited had fancy brakes. There were only certain cars that were allowed to be used on the 20th Century Limited because they had a electromagnetic brake or some such like that. So, okay, so let's see. So here's a couple pictures. These came out of the Railway Prototype Cyclopedia, Volume 11, as you can see. Can I move this? I'm having trouble seeing this because this little, yeah, there we go. Okay. So here's your D22 valve, right? That's your D22 control valve. And obviously that's a relay and there's a quick service valve. But this is sort of the thing you're looking for. That's the main deal. Okay. All right. And here's the S-scale equivalents of those. Again, this is that brake cylinder, right? Again, there'd be two other, this is sort of your basic brake cylinder, and then there's two other air tanks that would have been used. Here's your D22 valve. And then this is one of those other valves. Probably, we were trying to decide this the other day, but it's probably this A2 quick service or maybe this relay valve. But it doesn't necessarily look exactly, whoops, I'm going the wrong way, sorry. It doesn't necessarily look exactly like either one of them in the picture. So we're having a bit of trouble trying to figure out exactly what that's supposed to be representing. So, okay, now if you look at this photograph here, in addition to a whole bunch of other stuff in here, here is your D22 valve right there. So that's the D22 valve that you're looking at. Okay, this is your brake cylinder. And now if you look, it says 11 is the D22 air brake control valve, but they're really kind of showing the brake cylinder. This is the D22 control valve right here. Okay, this guy here. All right, so let's see. Okay, so heating. Now heating, notice I did not divide the heating exactly into the eras because what happens is that some of these types of heating systems cross over different eras. So again, if you look at sort of the ancient time, they had wood stoves, right? And so that doesn't really count as underbody detail because they would have had a stove sticking, a pipe sticking out of the roof. So that's not the underbody, that's the roof. When you got to steam heat, steam heat was piped from the, from the steam engine. People talk about, nowadays we talk about the electric heat in the cars, and we say, it's HEP, head end power. But, think about it, steam heat was really head end power. It was just a different kind of power, right? So passenger cars have always been heated by head end power. So, again, I'm not going to get into the idea of like all the piping and whatnot, but there would be piping for all this stuff, but primarily what you're looking at are these things that are variously called either blowdowns or vapor. What is it? Not vapor. What's the word I'm looking for?
Steam traps.
Steam trap. That's it. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's the steam trap, right? So they're variously called blowdowns or steam traps, and they're not really a steam trap. What they really are is a hot water trap. The idea was that if there was any hot water in the system, it would fall down into this area and it wouldn't come out the radiator things and scald people. So that's the basic premise. But basically for heating, what you're going to be seeing as a detail on the car are some of these steam traps. Okay, so or blowdowns. And again, in Estill alone, Bill's Train Shop sells 4 different kinds of these, and they're all here's one of them. Okay, that one I think probably looks the most like this one of any that he's got, but he's got several other ones and trying to figure out which one matches what you've got. Now again, if you're buying Rapido passenger cars, he's already done most of this for you. And, that stuff's all there, just the question of, whether it's right. But if you're putting your own stuff on, again, what is it that you're looking at? If you're looking at a car somewhere, what am I seeing? Okay. This car also, is this the end of my, yeah, that's the end of my show. This car also illustrates one of the small problems that you've got in this, that, in the way I'm trying to present this is that, again, I put the generator on and then I was like, oh, wait, I'm not covering electrical, but this car's got a generator. The main use of the generators in later years was to run the air conditioners and of course the lighting, but this is a small generator that didn't have to put out a very large output. because this car has ICE air conditioning. So these are ICE boxes. Okay. So, but like you look at the generator, like how do I talk about generators without talking about air conditioners, or air conditioners without generators? So obviously several of these systems are interlinked or interconnected, but you'll just have to put up with me on that. This is the Central Park. It is in Northeast Pennsylvania at the, whatever they call that, the Central Railroad Museum or something. I forget the name of the little railroad museum they've got, but they've got a number of Pullman cars and actually a couple of really nice lightweights that we'll see in a little while. So, but anyway, that's your basic heating. Like I said, what you're going to see from heating is going to be several of these things hanging down from the cars. Okay. Don't confuse them with toilet vents. Toilet vents are generally just sort of straight, whereas these are, or toilet chute, I guess I should say, not a vent, but a toilet chute, whereas these have this sort of a knob on the bottom of them. So anyway, that's what I've got for tonight. Again, if that seemed a little, let's see if stop the share here. Okay.
Question?
I'd be happy to take questions. If that seemed a little fast and loose, I'm sorry. This is sort of my really busy time of the year at school right now. And, next week's, hopefully I'll be a little, or not 2 weeks, I'll be a little more organized. So anyway, thank you.
So when they have, so back on the wooden car, I think it was, where they had the U type of brakes.
Okay. The UC probably would have been like a heavyweight, maybe. I mean, again,
Okay. So you said they had 2 cylinders. Did they have 2 of the triple type valves? Is that valve that they have similar to a freight car triple valve?
Yes. The UC valve is a triple valve.
Okay. So would they, if they had 2 cylinders, would they have 2 valves?
I don't believe so. I believe they ran both cylinders off the one valve.
Okay.
So
off the same line, just keep the line.
Yeah.
So
they just ran, like the control came out of the UC valve and it went out to 2 different brake cylinders.
Okay.
So,
all right.
And, again, for the wood cars, probably not. They probably only had 1 brake cylinder. And again, if I can find some information on when UC brakes sort of started replacing the other ones, or, again, I'm sure they, like you saw that Rutland car still had its LN brake or whichever one it was, PM brake. But so I'm, some of them just, once they got it working, it didn't really matter. It was still an air brake, I guess. So.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Jamie, thank you so much for tonight. I really do appreciate it, and I hate to run, but we really are getting long here, and I've got to introduce our featured model.
I say no problem. I'm hoping I'm not running over. So.
No, you're doing great. Thank you so much. Looking forward to next time and in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Like to introduce you to Bernard Kreitzer. I hope I pronounced your name right, Bernie, of National Capital Trains. He's the owner of the company. Bernie and I have talked several times, and I've really been impressed. Bernie's an N-scaler, knows an awful lot about the hobby and about the N-scale market. And I think you're going to enjoy hearing from him. Bernie, thank you so much. And I apologize for probably mispronouncing your name.
Hi, welcome everybody. I want to begin by thanking you, Jim, for the opportunity to speak to your group. I am very impressed and have great respect for some of the outstanding modeling that I've been listening to for the past hour, I should say. So what I'd like to do is talk to you about the N-scale world. I'm not going to call myself a craftsman. I'm far from a craftsman, but I've been a modeler for over 60 years. And I have been in business probably with National Capital Trains for over 30 years. And throughout that journey, we kind of settled on N-scale after a long period of trying a number of the other scales, all of which are quite good. But the N-scale fit not only our personal modeling needs, but also the interest of a large number of people living in our markets. So what I want to do is start, we're basically about 15, 16 months past the COVID. And I wanted to talk a little bit before we get into the N-scale and some of the products and look at our operating display layout. I wanted to talk just a little bit about what is happening. And these issues are not just hold for N-scale, but I call them 4 singularities that are applying across the board to all scales. And they involve the four elements that make up our hobby and our industry. They start with you and me as the model railroaders. They move over to myself as a dealer. They then go to manufacturers and importers, names like Broadway Limited, Lionel, Atlas, Cato, all companies that have limited to almost no production in the US, but design things and have them produced abroad and are imported and distributed within the United States. And the last part of the equation are the foreign manufacturers who make these parts. So when you look at the entire thing, it's a set of equations where if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, there has to be some symmetry at all times between those elements of the equation. When you don't have symmetry, either you have too many people who are losing interest in the hobby, or there's a number of shops going out of business, or in some cases you can't get product. In other cases, manufacturers have found that there's other opportunity costs to produce products in their home countries, which to some extent is Japan, but has largely moved to China, offshore, and will probably evolve and move in a few other places very soon. Well, I should add, there is some market in Korea as well. So what are some of the issues that we're facing today? And again, this is going to be across the entire spectrum. Well, the first one I think is supply shortages. Everywhere I look, I know every day I'm in a situation where we sell a lot, but I wind up having to turn away almost as much business as our sales because we're all out of product. There was a great, backlog during COVID when many of the plants around the world shut down. We've worked off all of our inventory, and then, we're just waiting as new product comes in. Now, thankfully, in the last couple of months, I've seen the resumption of that pipeline, not only in to the United States, but I've seen it in terms of supplies, coming to Europe and to other, areas. And I think the thing you've got to remember about this is not just a US-centric or Japanese-centric model railroad. It's a world market. You have a large community in Western Europe. You have a growing community in Eastern Europe and some activity actually in the European part of Russia. And last but not least, you have a growing market not only in Taiwan and Asia, but now starting to grow in China. So that's the first of the issues we're all facing. The second issue has to do with the transportation infrastructure. I never thought that it would be more difficult and timely to move an item out of the US West Coast custom zones and harbors and rail to the distribution points in the United States, largely in the East and in the West, and it would take a longer time than it would to sail that item from Asia to the US West Coast. But in some instances, we've had a large delays. Now they're starting to clear up now because there's more containers available, more ships are available, activity is beginning to pick up. The third thing we're all seeing across the board, and I see it almost every day, is price inflation. Everywhere, raw materials seem to be going up in price, be it lumber, be it petroleum feedstocks in the form of polystyrene, to make the plastics that go into many of our models, be it the metal, the white metal that goes into building trucks and other products. It's going up. And of course, wages are growing up in the foreign markets. So you now see a situation where in some of the Asian countries, there are not that many people who are coming from the countryside to the city. The people already in the city are finding that they can make more money building memory circuits or doing other type of skilled work than working on model trains. So in some instances, a number of the suppliers will basically be raising their price because it's their only way to retain labor. Okay, the last thing that we see in all of this going on is product innovation. And that just keeps coming. I know in N scale, I can talk to you about body style. A company like Microtrains, who makes some of the outstanding freight cars, if not the most outstanding, they have about 45 body styles of freight cars and a few passenger cars. We have laser graphics applied. Some of the cars that come out now are not only beautifully painted and lettered, but they can be weathered or they can be graffitied. And so you see a lot of different custom work coming out from manufacturers in that regard. We have electronics has really improved. And one of the biggest things I see in N scale is we move now to a large amount of digital, and we're starting to move into sound. So when I started getting involved in N scale about 20 years ago, 1-2% of what we had, somebody thought about digital. Today, we look at sales for the week, or we wind up doing a large show, and about 2/3 of what we sell is sound-based and digital-based. In fact, in some product lines, what I can tell you that pretty much everything we order is digital and sound. So having said that, where is this taking us as a future for all of us? Well, the hard issue is going to be, how do you manage all of this? How do you manage supply shortages, transportation, price inflation, new product, and how do you keep the four elements of the equation, or the four horsemen of the happy, meaning the model railroader, the dealer, the manufacturer, and the foreign supplier? So one of the first things you're going to see is we're going to all move forward steadily. We're not going to see, to avoid boom and bust, we're not going to see any particular supplier flood the market with product at this point. That would do no good for anyone, because a lot of dealers would have product sitting. A lot of dealers would have a problem paying for the large amount. And you, of course, the consumers, would have a hard time absorbing it all at once. The new business models we're going to look at are going to be virtual activities such as this, a variety of other virtual shows that I do and will continue to do. At some point, we are going to have some of our retail hours are going to be essentially virtual hours, where we will be available and you'll be able to reach us on Zoom and you can go through things. Another trend that we've adopted with our website has been, we can't take pictures of everything. We have linkages, obviously, to all of you, all of the manufacturers. However, in some instances, particularly with our brass and N scale and HO, the customer wants to see something, it's a very expensive piece. And our rule of that service is, contact us, you'll get a number of photos, and you can get a live video of the running and operation. We will continue to do that. We will specialize in things. And in N scale, not only we specialize in the American, but we'll talk about it a little bit later, we carry a lot of foreign trains, because model railroading is an international hobby, as I noted earlier, and many of the people that our customers, have ridden these trains all over the world. So let's talk a little bit about N scale. N scale, started out a number of years ago, probably 50 to 60 years ago, and it largely started out in Japan. The initial Japanese activities, essentially, they looked at the limited space they had. And to us, a 4x8 table would be, something not a big deal, no big deal. In Japan, there were not room for 4x8 tables, unless you had a situation in your apartment, which had very high rent in places like Tokyo or the other major cities, where you could fold a table up into the wall the way you could fold a bed into the wall. So what happened was, many of the high schools started to form clubs. And so you had a wide range of clubs that developed in Japan as the hobby grew up, both in HO and in N scale. The second thing you had was the advent of modules. That was much more an American situation, where a number of people who were limited in space and living in the Washington, D.C. area with a high retail prices for housing, which continue to go up. We have a large amount of modules. Our Northern Virginia N-scale trackers are probably one of the largest N-scale modular groups in the country. And I've been to shows with them where they've invited other N-scale module groups from around the country. And sometimes they've had as many as 300 2x4 foot modules plugged together. And each time they have a competition as to, can we run the longest train of all time? And lastly, for some who do not have the space, they use N-scale, but they use a thing called T-track, where they just have a small table, the cast resin table, and they put 1x1 modules on those tables, and they operate that way. So with that, I'm going to walk over here. I'm going to show you our operational display. You get an idea of what we have. Okay, it's going to take me a second, to start it up. So they can stand up and hold it. All right, we'll start up one of the trains. Let them see it. Just bear with us for a second. There. Go down. So what we are doing here is this is our display layout we run at shows, and to test everything, we run up to 6 trains at any one time. Now, one of our trains is running, the outside train, the Super Chief, is running in analog, and everything else will be running in DCC. I'll call up a couple of more trains. Can most of you see the operation?
I see a thumb.
Okay, how about now? Can you see? Oh, can you see the trains running?
Yes.
Okay. Let me stay with this and show you a couple. We have 6 trains that can run. It's an area 3.5 by 7. We run 6 trains as well as trams. You know, we can run around. So, see if I can get a tram going. So that's an example of some of the operation, and I'm sorry for the technical, issues here. So let me come back over here and talk about a few of the other products. Some people talk. Can you guys see the Lupa track?
No. Yeah, now I can.
Okay. Okay. I can't, it's not shifting. I'm sorry, normally I can reverse the screen and we're having a technical problem here on the iPad, if you'll bear with me.
We were seeing the Lupa track.
Okay, let me get back to this. Okay, everybody talks about getting into N scale. Is that clear now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, what I have here is a loop. This is an oval. It's approximately 1 foot wide. The tracks are 6 radius, and that's a small, high performance little tram that's running. That particular layout takes a few minutes to put together and has been assembled by my 7-year-old granddaughter and my 4-year-old grandson. So it gives you an idea that it's fairly easy to get involved in N-scale. Now, next to it is what we call a train in the box. That is a very prototypical train. Okay, that's the Virginia Railway Transit. And that's a train that runs from the suburbs in Northern Virginia to Washington, D.C. Now, that train in the box has an engine, an F40PH there. It has 3 cars, and it runs, and it contains track and a power pack. Now,
I
we
need
have
to, Bernard, you actually need to pan it down just a little bit.
How's that?
A little farther.
There?
There we go.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Now, next to it, we have a foreign train that I'm going to put into place. That is the Dr. Yellow. Dr. Yellow is the inspection train for the Shinkansen Nozomi. And that train is actually equipped to run with digital, and it can be expanded to a 7 to 11 car train. Then also, there's a Chicago Metra, and this is the Shinkansen Nozomi. Now, having been through that, here's an example of an N-scale diesel, a modern diesel in Japanese, a double ender. That's their version. And I wanted to show you one of the greatest innovations that's come in a long time. This is the new car from Rapido. This is the Canadian. It's a totally prototypical Canadian passenger car. It's a coffee Vista dump, and it's set in the Via scheme. And if you look, that's the underbody detail. Our previous.
You also, Bernard, you need to move it over just a little bit. There you go.
Okay. Our previous speaker talked about underbody detail. Well, the Rapido people, I think did a tremendous job in producing it. They produce also a 10-car train as well. Now let me show you, this is a foreign train. This is a foreign, Japanese train that runs in the Kyoto area. It's equipped with digital and it runs very smoothly. It takes a 9-inch or an 11-inch radius.
Can you
So-
pull it back a little bit, Bernard?
How's that now?
Yeah, that'll work. Thank you.
Okay. And let me show you one more thing, if I can get it going here. This is an example of the cars in the Canadian set. They're 10-car, they're prototypical. So I'm going to turn it back to myself now. And I apologize for the technical delay. Obviously the next time that we do this, we'll have a much more improved, technical presentation. Anyhow,
Well,
we have a-
technology is fantastic until it doesn't work right.
okay, what doesn't work?
I said the technology is fantastic until it doesn't work right.
Yeah, that's correct. So we have a whole variety of people that are participate in N scale, and they range from some really outstanding modelers to a lot of people who are downsizing and just getting into something as they move to retirement homes and they have room for a small train. We have a lot of kids, young kids getting in, and we've seen the advent of a lot of clubs, particularly these new T-Track modules, which instead of your traditional 2x4 module is essentially a 1x1 module. And you can buy from Costco one of those resin tables, 3 or 4 of those resin tables, and then have a bunch of straight and curved modules and have your entire operation, in a small area. So space is not at a premium. Technology is getting better. I would tell you that there is an increased demand at the upper end, and just because it's small, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be cheaper. In some cases, it continues to go up. A 10-car Rapido Canadian set with lights and interior detail and everything, they run between $600 and $700. So it's not cheap. And that's before you get into, locomotives that have digital sound and other activities. I talked just a little bit about a number of the manufacturers. They're all quite outstanding. And I'm just going to go in no particular order that would imply a preference. Atlas has been around for a long time. They make some outstanding products, both in locomotives and freight cars and an N-scale track. And they cover, all the ranges from the very early steam diesel era all the way up until the modern era. Broadway Limited is one of the new entries, but extraordinarily dynamic in that many of their locomotives feature sound in DCC, and they're up to, I think, Proto 4 sound now is the newest thing they're advertising. And they've done some great jobs. One that we were particularly impressed with was the Pennsylvania Mountain, and we had that ready to show before the advent of some of the technical problems here today. Of course, Kato, everyone knows. They're legendary with their track, the performance, a number of their diesels. And I can tell you in that regard, we've had some of their diesels, we've run them 300-400 hours at shows and, at home layouts. And other than lubrication, maintenance, and occasionally replacing a motor, we've had no problems there. Rapido is probably the latest entry into the market. For a while there, they focused primarily on Canadian models and they focused primarily on HO. Now they're getting much more involved in N scale, and they do a lot of work, I know, in Britain in OO, which is very close to HO, not quite, quite HO. It's just a little bigger than HO. And in addition, they're starting to do, more American, prototype models, including buses, freight cars, etc. And who else is there? Intermountain, a firm in Denver, does a lot of product and development. Now, I hope, in going through all of this, and of course, I'm sorry, one more, Bachmann, which has been around for a long time and produces some pretty good products. For those of you who like steam Pennsylvania Railroad, they did a beautiful K4. For the New York Central, they did a beautiful J3A Hudson with sound per se. And then if you shift to freight and passenger cars, all the companies that I've talked about have done, really outstanding jobs. And there's a wide variety of track that's available, in all areas. What I think I'd like to do, because I know we've had some technical problems today, and you guys have run over time. I'll allow a little bit of time now for questions. And anybody who needs to reach me, you can always get me at www.nationalcapitaltrains.com or nctrains99@gmail.com. And I know Jim also has a copy, our address and contacts, you can reach us. And if you do, we can give you more information about us, as well as a number of, PowerPoint slide presentations and other activities. So with that, let me throw it open to some questions.
Anybody have any questions for Bernie?
Yeah, I have a question. Bernie, are you you don't have a brick and mortar store then, obviously?
No, there are no brick and mortar stores. Particularly where we lived in Washington, D.C., there were never really any hobby shops per se. Yet a number of people I know have succeeded in having, by going to shows or doing internet sales. And so essentially what we do is we do shows, we do internet sales, and we have a little bit of time each week where people can come over. They can arrange an appointment and come over as long as they have a mask. And we can accommodate up to 3 people at a time now. And we'll probably be accommodating, or more people in the future as the COVID issue diminishes in, seriousness.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I got a question about you're saying that the popularity N scale. What is there any reason why you didn't go Z scale?
Z scale starting to catch on now. When I started this a number of years ago, there was very little in Z scale. And so I focused I did a lot of HO, but then I moved down to N scale. And with the activities in our area, we just found a comfort zone, and then the customers came. But Z is quite good now.
Bernie, I wonder if you could talk about what I refer to as the heart and soul of the hobby. And that's the small guy, the small manufacturer, the guy that has an idea for a kit or a product and make 3D printed to start with or whatever. He starts his company and he starts providing product. Are those people coming into the in-scale market?
Yeah, you have some innovation in that market. Hang on. In fact, I'm going to get the name, one of the companies right now. I can show you who's really does terrific stuff. And I just need to get a copy of one of his cars. Okay. And this is called Wheels of Time. His name is Matthew. He's out on the West Coast. He started building Harriman cars, and he moved into in N scale, a whole series of Harriman passenger cars and baggage cars. And he also then moved on to doing stuff in HO, as well as bulldozer kits, lumber loads. And he's innovated and done a lot of things. I think part of the slowdown was when he did a lot of that innovation, he wound up getting caught when the Chinese manufacturer shut down due to COVID or insolvency. Another who started small and has grown up a lot is Intermountain. And of course, they're now basically getting back online after all the issues. Trainworks is another relatively small manufacturer. And many of these guys, they did incredible design work. They were very good as modelers, but then in order to achieve a low cost, given the cost of their tooling, they wound up having to go abroad, and they saw their costs go up, and they saw different companies go in and out of business. And let me tell you, when you're 10,000 miles away and you have your proprietary data, you can talk about lawsuits, but it's not going to work. You might win a suit, but how are you going to go 10,000 miles in another language get your tooling out of that, make sure your tooling, it still works. Take your tooling somewhere else, have somebody do prototype runs, and then scale up again. That's a massive, massive thing. So I take my hat off to those people. And of course, the first and foremost was Cliff Grant and his company before they retired. Another couple of guys bought them out in Denver, and they have that car thing, and they have the old San Juan models. So they've done good. And there's a variety of other small guys in N scale. I think Rapido, he started out small. He's grown, quite large, from just doing a few projects in N scale. And he wound up now probably having a partnership in 3 or 4 of factories in China. And he's been extremely successful. And I think the key for a number of them has been how successful you can be in working with your foreign partner. And he's been among the most successful, and as have some of the German companies. And again, it's a huge model railroad world. We're just one piece. And when I think sometimes of the big companies, the Katos, the Tomixes, Tomix just produces for the Japanese market, and he produces toys under Tomy, things such as Thomas the Tank. Kato produces for the world, but probably 75-80% of his work is for the Japanese market, because he's Avis and the other guy is Hertz, and they're all trying to keep up, as well as all of the small people there. No, the innovation will continue now. It's just, it's going to have to take place with these new business models, and people are going to have to raise capital, and they're going to have to find a way, to maintain a tie to a foreign manufacturer and all the changes that, come with that. I mean, I personally think the future is bright. It's just we're going to have to roll up our sleeves, and we're going to have to do it. And perhaps someday there'll be firms that follow the lead of Microtrains, who's now probably one of the last and most outstanding of the U.S. manufacturers. And I'll tell you, any of his cars are second to none.
Bernie, what should the modeler like me expect in the next 5 years?
It's going to take that much time for things to settle down, but you should expect lots of innovation, lots more electronics. You're going to have the application of electronics. And in a way, it's ironic, because the first companies that had the electronics were American Flyer and Lionel in the 40s and 50s, and they had all that animation. Today, you're going to have a much more realistic animation made by a much better technology product that's much more highly accurate and reliable. You're going to have that. You're going to have far more weather cars and draft cars. You'll see less and less, I think, undecorated stuff. You'll come to a point where digital or some form of digital and or sound will be the basic things, and analog will start, going away. You have a pretty good amount of track. You'll see, I think, more prototypical couplers, better railroad trucks. And this example I showed you of the Rapido passenger car is, to me, one of the most outstanding things you can do. I mean, that's incredible detail for 1/160th. I mean, I sold in 30 years, I've sold hundreds of passenger car sets. I've sold probably 40 or 50 in brass, and there's no detail that rivals it. Now, some of the Kato name trends, like Santa Fe Super Chief, the El Capitan, they rival it. You're going to see more of those. You're going to see things tailored, specific, name trains. Unfortunately, since the tooling cost per name train, let's say you wanted to build a 1947 Empire builder, you wanted to use E7s, and you had a tool for 8 to 9 cars. Well, that might use up all the tooling available in a particular company's budget for a year and a half. So they're going to put out one run. In that one run, they're basically going to be lucky to break even. And they want to make some profit, so they're going to have to do another run. So before they can begin manufacturing, another new prototype, somebody will say, well, let's shift to North Coast, or let's, shift to the Sioux Railroad. They can't until they get all of that stuff done. I mean, at the end of the day, folks, it's still a business, and we have to do it. But I think it's a very rosy future if everybody is willing to continue. And these events, such as what you're having, are ways to enhance that dialogue. I'm doing live events, with other groups as well, doing virtual shows. And the more that we do of this, the more people get out, you're going to see a broader based hobby. You're going to see a lot of individuals who just get into specialization, such as we're doing, because nobody's going to be able to afford to have a brick and mortar shop. I mean, the few places that had brick and mortar shops, if they haven't closed up, they're probably closed, because they look at how much money they're making by selling on the internet versus what they're making with their fixed costs in a hobby shop. And quite frankly, unless you're talking about the holiday season or some new item has come out, or you're have opening hours because there's a huge train show near you, what could it be? 5, 7%, 10% of your sales would be retail, and 90% of your sales at a much lower fixed cost and operating cost is going to be the other way. So it's going to be full of challenges. It's going to be full of adjustments. I mean, I often get the question, well, are you scared because so-and-so is buying as a distributor and they can undercut you? Not particularly. I used to think about it. Now I know that as long as we can buy product and we can provide the services, as you see this test railroad before us, we take to every show. So a customer knows when they buy something, they know that it runs. They know that we stand behind it, or the manufacturer, or both of us. People have questions, they call me, can you show me a video of something running? Well, the first or second time they might not buy some, but the third time they come back. So all of that's going to go into an equation. It's going to be a new equation in a new reality. And since we're living in a technology world, the equilibrium isn't going to settle like 4 = 4 on each side. It's going to be a dynamic equilibrium, like you're flying an airplane or you're riding in a ship. You're constantly going to be charting new courses and navigation just to keep in balance. But I think it's exciting.
I agree.
So anybody has questions, anything, please, send them over to us. And the next time we'll have better technology so we can, take you through more things.
We'll look forward to it, Bernie. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for tonight, though. I really do appreciate you being here.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Bye now.
Bye now. Well, folks, that's it for this evening. I thank you so much for being here. Our next show is Saturday, June the 5th. Our featured modeler is Nick Massey, who owns ITLA. We have special segments with Rick and Maureen Hunter coming back with their build along of their Hunterline bridge. Dave Silvernail is going to build some rocks and show us how to weather them. And we're going to have quick tips again from Ted Becker because Paul is still going to be out for a while. So let me close by saying, please visit our website, newtracksmodeling.com. Get more information on the upcoming shows, on what we plan to do, on the guests that we're going to be having, and get an email with the Zoom login link for each one of the shows. Thank you so much for coming. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed the show. Happy modeling until the next one. Thank you.